I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're speaking with Dorothy Carskadon, author of a powerful book. It's called Echoes of the Fort Hood Shooting, Surviving the Unthinkable. In this powerful memoir, Dorothy recounts her experiences as a survivor of the tragic 2009 Fort Hood shooting, offering deep insights into resilience, recovery, and healing. Her story sheds light on the lasting impact of trauma and the strength it takes to move forward. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We'd like to thank the team at Universal Ghostwriting for helping us put her in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her remarkable book. The links are below this interview. Dorothy, great to see you. Thank you for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Your story is so incredible. Surviving any type of mass casualty event has to leave lasting scars. Has it changed you as a person surviving that terrible, terrible dark day in 2009?
Um, I have been really lucky. It changed me more for enlightenment than any massive changes. I didn't have any big, huge revelations, but I had small incremental things because I was a VA social worker as on active duty as a reserve social worker um, on my way to Afghanistan. And when I got shot, within a couple of months, I was back at the VA doing my job again. So I worked with combat theater veterans, which I believe was probably one of the things that helped me heal.
Tell us a little bit about that day. It's 2009. You're about to be shipped off to Afghanistan, as I understand it. And this is your last stop before being sent abroad. And what happens?
So it's actually our first day on Fort Hood, first 24-hour day. We had just gotten there. We were in just our regular BDUs, our battle dress uniform, the camouflage, and we were going through the stations that we have to go through to prepare to leave, to get our will done, to make sure we have dog tags, flu shots, all of that. So it's a lot of administrative paperwork. So we just have our uniform on. We hadn't even gotten to the step of getting um, Kevlar or a helmet or our weapon. So we're just in our uniforms. And I go to the medical station, which is in a very small building on the post. And there were probably 80 people in the building already in these chairs up in front. And so I was actually put into a hallway behind that. So I didn't actually see when the shooting started. And for me, which was probably another protector for me from PTSD, was I thought it was a training exercise because we had just done 30 days of training in California getting shot with plastic bullets and paintball bullets, which, by the way, hurt. And so when when I got hit, I thought it was a plastic bullet.
Mm, amazing. Where were you hit? And when did you realize this isn't a plastic bullet? I'm bleeding.
Um, well, the first bullet was a graze to the head. And when I went over to talk to Private Velez, I didn't know her at the time, but she was telling me that she was pregnant and hit. So she was a pregnant female that died that day. And I went to go find additional medical help for her, thinking this is a really bad place for this young woman to be because she was just getting back from Iraq. And um, so I got up and then I got hit in the hip, two bullets to the hip, it turned out, one through my pelvic bone. Um, and I thought that that was the plastic bullet that just hurt. And then I got hit in the stomach and I said, this is a stupid field exercise. I'm done. So it wasn't until really they were cutting up my clothes that I realized that this was real. Um, so, and when they did my IV, and the thing about the military, when if I had been shot at Walmart or Walgreens or something, I would have died. But being shot in the middle of medical units, because our unit was a medical unit, even though it was a mental health unit, and our sister unit was a medical unit. So we had combat medics instilled in our units. So we had very qualified people using flu bandages to, um, and so they're literally tearing up their own uniforms to make bandages for the wounded. And so, these are the people who I admire. Uh, and my unit deployed on time despite um, 25% losses to both death and injury. So, I kind of look back, and luckily, like I said, I used to work with combat theater veterans who had all been through something like this, either World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and I had also been to Desert Storm. So it was um, it was an interesting time, to
Amazing.
say the least.
Part of you angry that this was an enemy within, that this man lied in wait for a day like this, that he ate with his comrades, he drank with his comrades, he showered. I mean, it's a tight community being in the military, and he was one of you. And here he is, a
Well,
radicalized Muslim who turns a gun on you, right?
this was his first duty station, and as his first duty station out of medical school, so I was a little disheartened that he actually got through medical school, and I was very disheartened that he went through medical school on the military dime for this whole time. He came into the military at 18 and then went to medical school after basic training. So he and so it was disheartening. I'm not sure which is more insulting, being a social worker shot by a psychiatrist or being a captain shot by a major. Um, and I'm on the say, I am very much for responsible gun ownership, have been all my life.
Right.
And I'm in the safest place you can be, on a military post, where they check the cars and they have a lot of regulations around even having a gun on you. And so he used the system, as he used his rank, he used the system, and he lied to a lot of people. So in the safest place in the world, there still was gun violence. It did dishearten me that it took 4 years for them to recognize the shooting as a terrorist issue, because for the first 4 years it was uh, workplace violence, even though we didn't know him. He was just a doctor who happened to be deploying with another unit to Afghanistan. So we had never met him, didn't know anything about him. So it's quite different that it really wasn't workplace violence, other than he was a major in uniform.
The new MO of the government, it's clearly terrorism, it's clearly extremism, and they deny that until the fury has died down. And then years later, oh yeah, that's right, he was a soldier of Allah. And it's like you said, it adds insult to injury, I think.
Well, and I'm not sure if part of that was because he had to go through the judicial system, and uh, they decided after he was convicted that they could redesignate the event. Um, so I'm sure there's also those kind of politics at the time. Plus, remember, it's 2009. So even though we had been in Iraq and Afghanistan for quite a while, uh, the home terrorist hadn't really thrived yet.
How many people died that day? How many people were injured?
13 were died that day, including one pregnant female, um, and 32 were injured. And I was one of the lucky ones. I was only shot 4 times. There was one gentleman shot 7 times. There was one gentleman shot squarely in the head, and he lived. Um, so it changed a lot of people's lives. And uh, I happen to work for the Vet Center, which is a small counseling center within the VA that specializes in counseling combat theater veterans. And I was very proud of their response of partnering with the VA, partnering with the military uh, to provide vans that came down, counseling vans came down and rotated for 2 months just to provide the community counseling. I mean, over 8,000 people got counseling just through the VA during that month after the shooting.
Much needed, no doubt, after surviving something like that. What was your physical recovery like from your wounds?
Um, I that took a little longer, because my pelvic bone now had a hole in it. It had to heal, so it took me about 6 months to learn to walk again. I did walk with a walker like 2 days after I got shot, so they got me out of bed immediately. Um, so for the month of November, I pretty much was just I left Fort Hood just before Thanksgiving. So November 5th to about November 25th. So I was there for about 20 days. Then I came home to Wisconsin at the time. And for the month of December, I was allowed to kind of laze around. But after Christmas, they got me back in part of the occupational therapy for the VA. For the military is you must work. So for January, I worked for my reserve unit. And then by February, I was back at my job because I was a federal employee, back at my job in the vet center.
Amazing. Um, was that the end of your military career after that?
Um, Pretty much. I had lost a lot of weight to get back in the military. That it was my second stint in the military. Like I said, I was a Desert Storm veteran.
Right.
And I gained weight back because of just
The
healing.
mobility, yeah.
Yeah. And then they said, well, if you lose your weight again, you get back into physical condition again. And I'm 48. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, it's not happening.
You were about 48 years old when you got shot?
Yes, sir.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much for your service to this country. I think women aren't recognized enough in the military. So, again, God bless you and thank you for your service. Let me ask you what life has been like since leaving the military. You work as a social worker now. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've been working for the Department of Veterans Affairs from 1997 until I retired in 2021. So I was about halfway through my career at that point, 18 years in, uh, working as a social worker for combat theater veterans. So I was already immersed in the combat veteran uh, issues.
Mm.
And I worked directly with folks who are coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan on a regular basis. So that really helped my healing because I was surrounded by people who normalized tragedy because they were all coming back from war having lost people. And my unit and my sister unit, between my unit and my sister unit, we were both two combat stress companies, one going to Afghanistan, one going to Iraq. Um, and there were 5 people that I knew that were killed that day. And I talked regularly to people who lost people that died. So it helped me being around fellow veterans. And I think that's what really helped me heal. And the reason I wrote this book is not only to honor the 13 fallen um, as a 15-year anniversary, but it's also to honor the men and women who continued the mission and left on time despite the incident. I mean, they left on the date they were supposed to be deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan and continued on with the mission despite all the losses, which also meant there were a lot of people who volunteered to come back in and fill our slots. I mean, one of the people I actually knew came from the reserves into my slot and had worked for the VA as well. So, it's a small community, like you said.
It's a small community of very brave people who make unbelievable sacrifices, whether they get injured or killed or not. It's all a sacrifice. And like I said, we salute you and thank you for your service. This book is quite an eye-opener, folks, to the level of commitment, the level of service to this country, to the level of sacrifice It's called Echoes of the Fort Hood Shooting, Surviving the Unthinkable. It is a powerful memoir, and in it, Dorothy recounts her experiences as a survivor of the tragic 2009 Fort Hood shooting, offering deep insights into resilience, recovery, and healing. And I believe you were a captain when this happened to you, Dorothy?
Yes, sir. I was a captain in the U.S. Army, and you know, and I want to acknowledge the, how tough it is on the families. Um, for me, I focused on either going to war, and then when I got shot, I focused on healing. And but for my family, it was much bigger. And I'm very happy to say that my wife is wrote chapter 5 of the book. So you really get a feel for what she went through, and some of the things that, and I do talk about things in the book that I couldn't talk about at the time, because in 2009, there was don't ask, don't tell. Uh, Same-sex marriage was not legal at the time, although it was legal in Iowa where we got married just before I deployed. And so we had to make some decisions. I chose not to talk to the media for a very, very long time, because to honor the fallen, to honor the people who, the very brave men and women who continued on with the mission, and not make it about a policy I disagreed with.
Well, thank goodness you had a family structure at home, a wife to take care of you when you were shot. And because I know that support is so absolutely needed and necessary, you never realize how much you need another human being until you're injured. So,
And having a very supportive family is very, very helpful.
without a doubt. Captain, thank you for your service and thank you for your
Thank
time
you.
today. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.